Okay, so this is the second video for creating the Jagdpanther tank destroyer. And I've got here a variety of tracing paper patches. And if I refer to something as patches from now on in, they're made of tracing paper. And they work really great for bonding the sides and stuff together. And you can still see the detailing for where you need to put items right through them. So they are quite optimal for this job. And I'm going to start out by forming this bond back here. Now, before you start forming bonds, you want to make sure that all the angles that you're going to be gluing are sort of folded beyond where they're going to actually need to sit. Because it makes it so that they sit in their position more easily. Especially this rear fold. Really, it's quite harsh. So keep that in mind. And these sides here, these wings, really important that they are able to fold over pretty much all the way. Because you kind of just want them sitting in position. Once you got that ready, get yourself a number of patches. And we're going to bond this superstructure rear to the sides of the superstructure here. And where it bonds is pretty important. You want the bottom of this edge here resting on the top of this edge here, so it will come all the way out and over the side. So this will be flush all the way down, and that's how you want to glue that piece in there. So take some thin glue, 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 works good, and use small amounts of it as well. And one way you can make this bond a little bit easier is to put a bead of glue along this surface before you even start the patching process, and that can kind of help to make it a bit stronger. So you want to find a way to use your fingers to hold it while not getting him in the way of where you want to put your patch. Make sure everything's right lined up. And you can see I'm kind of putting a little bit of pressure on this superstructure rear piece as I glue it in. I'm going to want to make sure that it's not warped before I finish this bond. So use really small amounts of glue, and not only will that form the bonds a bit quicker, but you probably can't see it, but I've got a little bit of glue underneath the patch here, and it kind of forms wave things. You can sort of see the glue bunched up under there. So the less glue you can use to make these bonds is kind of better. I mean, up to the point where you're not having enough glue to make a bond at all. So same thing for the other side. And you do have to do both sides sort of, I mean, not at the same time, but before continuing. Okay, now that that's ready, give that a minute to dry, I guess, back there. We don't want to be putting too much pressure on it right away, and we'll form these front angles here. And the way they meet is slightly different from the way those other ones meet. So optimally, you want to make sure everything's nice and straight here. The inside corner of this piece of cardboard and the inside corner of this piece of cardboard should meet flush all the way down to the tip. That's optimal. I mean, take what you can get. It may not work out that way. It kind of depends on somehow how these folds came together. But you should be able to get it pretty close to that. And again, finding a place to put your fingers to hold the pieces in place is one of the hardest things about using these patches. And the first side is always more difficult, essentially, always more difficult than the second one. Now when I'm doing these corner to corner ones, I will generally try to put the patch on all at once rather than one side and then the other side, because it's really difficult to kind of see what's going on underneath the patch once you've got it on one side. So I'll usually put the glue on and then I'll just go ahead and bond the whole thing all the way down. And if it ends up having come apart or you get a bad bond, you can just take your scraper blade, slice it apart, and re-glue it. Okay, and that for both sides as well. Now, if your piece of tracing paper sort of overshoots the end, oops. See, now if you don't get your bond all at once, you kind of have to peel back the piece of paper so you can see where everything's ending up. Still doable, but it makes it a little more difficult. So if your tracing paper overshoots the edges, don't worry about it. It's just let it dry, and then it's really easy to just trim off with a scraper blade later. So now we can go back to the rear here, where things have dried a little bit in the meantime, and make this final fold. Now, you can kind of see how it should fit together. This, if you can, hopefully yours ended up like this, where there's kind of a slot that this back part fits in just underneath the top of the hull top. That's marked as the hull top here. And so it should be able to sort of hold it together pretty easily if you get those sides to sit in that trough. And if the sides here are overshooting the back a little bit, that's good. You want that. You don't want it to overshoot tons, so make sure that there's this hull top part isn't tucked underneath the rear of the superstructure. Or if it is tucked, it's not very tucked. You shouldn't have a problem with that because the superstructure rear is sitting right down on top of this, and so should this hull top part. So get one side sort of set in place, and then put a patch along this surface here. sure I have a good size patch here. Don't try to bother getting both sides to sit in place perfectly, or else you just sit there struggling forever. And once you have the one side in, the other side should be much easier to sort of find its place. And this, once you get this bond done, let it dry, and then we'll be moving on to the next step. I believe we'll be adding the lower hull sides. Alright. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. See you soon.